Hello, my name is Olesya Kopteva. I'm the training and 3D scanning team lead here at Artec 3D, and I'm very happy to see you here at our webinar devoted to human body scanning. This is an open webinar, meaning that we have a mixed audience today. Some are pretty new to the field, while others are already in the others have experience in 3D scanning. And everyone is absolutely welcome. We tried to build this webinar in such a way that it is informative both for those who have a 3D scanner and already are using an Artec 3D scanner for scanning people, and for those who are having a task to complete and are not sure whether a 3D scanner is what they need. We will start off by talking about spheres in which 3D scanner is used for scanning human bodies in part or entirely. Then we will talk about some specific use cases, the most interesting to our mind. And in the last part, which is actually the most interesting to my mind, the longest one, you will learn how you can make your hyper-realistic 3D scans of human bodies better and faster. Whether you need a body scan for CGI to cost your production time, or maybe you're a surgeon and you need to make a, let's say, body scan or scan of a head in a non-invasive manner. Or maybe you are my parents because they promised me that they will come and support me. So hi mom, hi dad. We very much welcome your questions throughout the webinar. Please make sure that you keep them coming anytime. I will respond to all of these questions as I see them in the chat after the webinar. And also, I'd like to remind you that the links to translations are also in the webinar. So please feel free to use them. Our simultaneous interpreters are doing a great job today. The webinar itself, where I will talk and give some tips and tricks, will last for about an hour, and then I will answer your questions. Yeah, seems like we are ready to start, and let's start with spheres of application.
What first comes to mind when talking about 3D scanning people is CGI, animation, and filmmaking. And it's all for a good reason. It's hard to imagine any recent movie without 3D technology, because it speeds up the process of filmmaking, and with it, the sky's the limit. But it's not limited to only these types of art. We have multiple projects for museums in our portfolio. And we have even scanned President Obama to make the very first 3D printed bust and live mask of a US president. In a moment, we'll take a look at this case in more detail. Similarly, if we continue to talk about creative spheres, 3D scans are widely used in fashion and design. This allows for making perfect-fitting customized apparel and accessories, and what is important, making it so much faster than before. To take one example, 3D scanning of breasts takes only a few seconds to do, and after that, ta-da, you have all the exact measurements. Scientific applications are also something not to be forgotten. 3D scanning is an important step when doing facial reconstruction for forensics and archaeology. In healthcare, limbs are scanned for medical purposes, such as creating bionic prostheses, and thanks to 3D scanning, children with microtia can now have perfect new ears.
Don't you love this little guy? I adore him. He's so genuinely happy. I really, really love him. Now that you're intrigued, well, I hope that you're intrigued, let's take a closer look at some of these cases.
Space Spider was a true game changer for the makeup artists of Saturday Night Live. A part of this late-night show is comedy sketches requiring custom makeup, for example, when Jim Carrey played President Joe Biden. Their traditional approach included live casting and a lot of physical contact for as long as 20 to 30 minutes. 3D scanning is much faster than that and solves the problem of social distancing. Another president, not played by anyone this time, President Obama himself, was the first president of the United States scanned with a 3D scanner. It was a project created by a Smithsonian-led team inspired by Abraham Lincoln's live mask. But President Lincoln had a plaster cast placed over his face and reportedly had to wait for about an hour for it to set before it could be removed. Look how much easier it was for President Obama with only a minute of scanning with Artec EVA. We mentioned earlier that 3D scanners are used in design and fashion. Ari van Twillert, a designer from the Netherlands, scans her patients to create ultra-comfortable customized bras for them. What is unique about this approach, in contrast with the traditional way of working, where a measuring tape is used, is that with 3D scanning, incredibly precise measurements are taken by the scanner without any need to physically touch the client. Not only underwear can be perfect, but sportswear too. In high-performance cycling, speed is everything, and the rider's body is responsible for roughly 80% of the drag. A UK company called Vortec is making use of a wind tunnel and Artec Leo to create custom skin suits for cyclists. They're working directly from the exact physical data of the cyclist, since imprecise dimensions could result in a wrinkle here or there, or fabric being overstretched. In the world of aerodynamics, all of this adds to performance-killing drag. These skin suits are believed to be the fastest on the market today, and the company is closely working with professional cyclists, Olympic cycling teams, and Tour de France riders. The next section, which is about medical applications, is actually my favorite section ever, and the reason why I'm so proud to work for Artec 3D. But I have to warn you that the cases which we are going to discuss may be emotionally challenging. They are all stories with happy endings after all, but still. For example, this case is from the rural prosthetics clinic of the non-profit organization Life Enabled in Guatemala. They specialize in affordable prosthesis. The traditional cost of materials for making a prosthetic arm is from $800 to $1,200. And with 3D scanning and printing, they can make an arm for approximately $4 in materials costs. They have already provided more than 400 prostheses to amputees in Guatemala. These little patients of Dr. Loon in California are children who were born with microtia, a condition where a child is born with a malformed or missing ear. Dr. Loon first scans the normal-sized ear of her patient with a Space Spider scanner, and then the adjustments to the 3D model are made based on the child's age and anatomy. After this, a custom ear implant is made and then surgically placed. Thanks to Artec scanners, cancer survivors also regain their confidence. A French surgeon equipped with Artec EVA and Space Spider works with women who went through a mastectomy, the surgical removal of one or both breasts. In France, there are 20,000 women every year who need a prosthesis after the surgery, and the standard choice, which they have, is limited to industrial options of 2 sizes and 2 skin tones, neither of which caters to black and brown women of color. Julien Montenegro makes personalized breast prosthesis, which softens the traumatic experience and helps create comfort and well-being for the patients. Artec 3D scanners were also used to help make comfortable and safe helmets for children with various conditions. Imogen, who is diagnosed with spastic diplegia, can't walk but loves riding a horse. But because she was also born with hydrocephaly, excessive swelling of the brain, her head is wider than normal, which means she could never find the riding helmet that fits correctly. Specialists at the Cerebral Innovation Center in Wales scanned her with their Artec EVA and used the resulting 3D model to create for her a custom helmet, which is not only comfortable, but has also been fully approved and certified by the British Standards Institution, attesting to the helmet's high level of protection and quality. Correctional helmets can be made in the same way for infants with cranial deformities, and a bit later we will have a demonstration of how a child's head can be scanned. And I have one more case study including children here. It relates to COVID-19 and wildfires in California in 2018. For adults, there are highly protective N95 masks, but there simply weren't any similar options for kids at the time. So, Kevin Go from Flow Labs decided to invent one. Together with our partner Indicate Technologies, he created the Flow mask. It's a filtration respirator mask that blocks over 99.8% of viruses, exceeding US breathability standards by 600%. It perfectly contours to a child's face while keeping the mask from touching their lips. It has disposable filters and is available on Amazon, in case you were wondering. Something that is not readily available on Amazon, but also became so much easier with an Artec scanner, is dental implants. Fernando Polanco from the USA uses Space Spider to scan a patient's face and their smile for 10 seconds and 3 seconds respectively, since all faces need to be aligned to the upper teeth to make the alignment accurate. These scans are then combined with a scan from an intraoral scanner and are shown to the patient for their approval. Once they're happy with what they see on the screen, the final 3D model is sent over to the in-house lab for creating the new perfect-fitting implants.
You must be wondering, how are they doing all this magic? Well, let me tell you, it's not magic at all, no witchcraft. It's pretty real, and you can do the same. And today we're going to give you some pretty practical overviews of how to make your 3D scans fast, effective. And that, in our case, means that there will be less time for scanning and less time for processing. Why is that important, you may ask? Well, actually, in terms of less time for scanning, the longer the time that the person needs to hold their pose, the higher the chances that they will move, which will be inevitably reflected in the scan. We have prepared some videos, which I will be commenting live. So once again, I just want to remind you to please type your questions in the chat anytime. I can see them. And we will start off by talking about scanning an entire body in what we refer to as a simple pose, and then we will proceed to a more complicated one and finish off by talking about scanning body parts. If we want to have a good human body scan, it's important to devote a minute to prepare. In fact, all basic scanning rules apply here. However, in most cases, good texture is one of the goals. So we need to pay extra attention to anything that can affect the texture of the model. This includes lighting and space. Since you have generally more control over where a person is going to stand, try to position them on a spot that is equally far from any light sources. Make sure there are no shadows or bright spots from the sunshine. So the more evenly the person is lit, the better is for the final texture. Okay, the lighting is sorted out. Now, as for the space around the object, well, actually, there is a way to scan with a turntable, which saves space, so you require less space, and is actually a good shot for those who are scanning with Artec EVA without a portable battery. But we are not going to look into scanning with a turntable today because this method brings certain limitations. Well, the first limitation is connected with the speed with which the table turns, and the second, and this actually more important, people get dizzy. And again, they are more prone to movement and they get shaky. Therefore, today we're going to be talking about scanning without a turntable. You need to create sufficient space to walk around the model. About 1.5 meters will be enough. If you are scanning with Artec EVA, a portable battery will make your life so much better. And Leo is perfectly wireless, so you can easily walk around the person. Now that we are happy with the scanning environment, let's check out the number of features to track and the scannability of the surface. A texture-rich floor will be of great help when we proceed to scan the legs, so there will be plenty of good features in the scanner's field of view. Also, the features and the scannability of human body are defined by the clothing being worn. In fact, you can always check in the scan preview how the fabric scans, but based on our experience, the types that should be avoided whenever possible are velvet, black leather, especially as glossy as this one, gauze, and any semi-transparent and transparent materials, and fur. It's worth mentioning that black clothing in general is not a hard-to-scan surface. Black cotton can be scanned quite easily in most cases. The only possible problem with it is the absence of geometrical features. So any creases in the fabric will help us here. Areas that are too narrow to be easily scanned should be avoided, and the collar is a really good example of this. If you'll flatten it before scanning, it will be so much easier to capture. The same thing is actually with vests, so narrow areas can be also created when people wear open jackets or vests. The flip side of these clothes is impossible to scan, and therefore the vest if the vest doesn't have to be open, you can recommend the model zipping it up or buttoning it up. The same thing with hoods. The area between them and the back is difficult to reach within the scanner, so flattening a hood will help. Shiny and loose accessories should be scanned with caution and preferably in only one position, if not substituted for something easier to scan. Glasses, like any transparent surface, will have the light of the scanner passing through them and should be removed prior to scanning. If they're an obligatory part of the costume, you can always scan them separately with a Space Spider and later on just align the two models. Now let's check out the model's hairstyle. Straight hair is generally easy to scan and often can be scanned as is. You may just want to take the hair off to the back or comb it to one place so that it is less scattered. Curly, disheveled, and spiky hair is more difficult and will require slower scanning. At the time of preparation, combing or dampening them with a bit of water can help. In difficult cases, you may also want to use dry shampoo. And some hairstyles, like an afro, is not scannable. Okay, the setup is done. The scannability of the clothes and of the hairdo is confirmed. Now, time for scanning? Not yet, just 1 second. There is an important point to consider, and that's the pose. A unique aspect of scanning human body is that a person may occasionally move around during scanning. And let's talk about how to minimize that. Well, we need to consider the pose. Even with the shortest, with the fastest scenario of scanning, a scan of a full human body will take about a minute. Therefore, as we have already mentioned, the longer the scanning process takes, the higher the chances that the person will move. And therefore, the pose which they take should be A, stable, and B, comfortable for them. Now we will take a look at how to scan people in what we consider a simple pose. If you get to choose the pose, remember that it should not feature narrow gaps. So do not let them stand with their legs too close together. A pose with the legs shoulder length apart ticks both boxes in terms of comfort and stability. But if the person doesn't like that, for whatever reason, you can suggest that they take a tiny step forward, half the size of their foot. This way they will be holding a good stable pose with each leg perfectly reachable via the scanner. Two areas that are more likely to move than others are fingers and the face. And again, as I've mentioned, that's going to be reflected in the scan. So we will talk about scanning the face later. But as for the hands, it will be much easier to keep them motionless if the person has them resting on their body, on the waist, the hips, or inside their pockets, or they can hold on to something. We're also regularly asked whether breathing affects a scan. Well, actually, regular, not too deep of breathing does not, but panting does. And it's important that the person isn't talking during the scanning or isn't laughing. Believe it or not, it happens. We will now be taking two scans. A head will be scanned separately from the body. When the person you are going to scan is of the same height or taller than you, scanning the head from the top down can be difficult because of the minimum distance required between the scanner and the object being scanned. In this case, we recommend scanning the head of the person together with the shoulders while the person is seated. And then we'll ask them to stand up with as few changes in the shoulder shape as possible. And we'll scan the rest of the body. It may be difficult for the person not to blink or move their eyes during scanning, and the useful tip before you start scanning is to ask the person to choose a point slightly above their line of sight and focus on it while you are scanning the face. This way, their facial expression will be more relaxed. As their facial expression is very likely to change, to get a good scan, we will move our scanner reasonably fast and do our best to scan every part of their face only once, just like in the picture. So an optimal trajectory is going from ear to nose, down to the chin. Let's make a little arc movement here. If you're scanning a man with facial hair, holding the scanner for a tiny bit longer on this area, on the mustache and beard, will give you better results. Then we move the scanner up to the forehead and then to another ear. And then we continue scanning the head as well as the hair. But we intend not to scan the face again after that, as the facial muscles are highly prone to movement. An essential part of scanning the hair is to always keep the shoulders in the field of view of the scanner. Moving the scanner away from the shoulders is likely to result in a loss of tracking. And after scanning the face, the ideal trajectory is to move your scanner in an arc from top to bottom while moving around the head. Depending on the shape, certain parts of the hair may only be visible to the scanner from a very certain angle, and therefore we are recommending this arc trajectory. And we also want to pay special attention to the top of the head, because it should be scanned at least once with the scanner perpendicularly. If the hair is fluffy or curly and reconstruction is proving more difficult, you can hold on to the scanner for a bit longer on that area while also keeping the shoulders in the field of view. And when scanning the back of the head, we remember to scan the area behind the ears and finish scanning the head at the same spot when we started scanning the face. All right. So the head is finished. Now we will ask our model to stand up with as little changes in the shoulder shape as possible, and we'll scan the rest of the body. The trajectory we recommend is as follows. The front part of the torso, then the side. It doesn't matter really which, the front or the right or the left. Then the back, then the other side, then the lower part of the torso, and then the legs. This allows you to avoid unnecessary repetitive data. And also, this is far more beneficial rather than the approach when they scan first the front of the entire body and then the back. With the trajectory that we recommend, we, so to say, split the body into several sections, upper, middle, and lower. And this will reduce the potential risk of data misalignment due to any movement. When scanning the front of the torso, be careful not to get the face in the scanner's field of view again. This is very likely to happen if there is intricate geometry on the chest that may be scanned from below. And here we need to give extra attention to any folds in the clothing as well as in the arms position. If the arms are crossed on the chest, always go for an extreme 90-degree angle above and below the arms. And if the arms are on the hips, the inner side of the elbow and the armpits should be scanned with extreme angles from the front and the back. And all these areas need to be addressed to obtain a good texture. Scanning the back actually may be challenging if the person you are scanning wears clothing without any pattern. In this case, there may not be enough features for tracking, and we recommend using the geometry of the body. Rather than concentrating on the center of the back, we try to keep the shoulders, the neck, or waist in the field of view. Since all that remains is to scan the legs, we recommend a scanning movement from top to bottom, from the waist down to the floor, because our floor is rich in texture, and if we lose tracking on the legs, we will be able to pick it back again on the floor. Why we should lose tracking, you may ask? Well, we shouldn't. Legs are generally easy to scan since they are less likely to move. However, scanning thin legs with no texture on them may prove challenging to maintain stable tracking. In this case, we recommend keeping both legs within the scanner's field of view to increase the amount of the scan surface. Now, if the person is wearing a dress or a skirt, as in our case, it's important to scan a bit of the wrong side of the fabric, because this way you will have the edge of the garment reconstructed to its best. The same actually applies to white sleeves of a t-shirt and white shorts. For shoes, to capture the side of the sole and the heel properly, move the scanner closer to the floor, turn it 90 degrees if needed. With stilettos, that is especially relevant, and point it perpendicularly to the heel. After you finish, a good idea is to ask the person not to change their pose for a few seconds while you check the data for completion. And here you can add any missing areas if needed. Now, after that, we align the data. Here I'm demonstrating manual alignment. Later on, I will also show auto alignment available in Artec Studio. Then we delete any unnecessary data that was captured, such as the back of the chair. Then we run global registration. We can do that by geometry to make it faster. Then we delete the shoulders from the head scan, and it is especially convenient to do at the collar line. Then we run sharp fusion with an applicable resolution. That is, we define the level of detail of the model. And we can also actually use smooth fusion if we are only scanning a head with hair. Then we delete any artifacts with the help of small object filter and simplify the model, that is, decrease the number of polygons in it. And also we can fine-tune the model if needed with the help of the feature brush. And the final step is we apply color or texture to the model. In some cases, if extra detail is required for the face, Space Spider is used for capturing it, while the rest of the body gets scanned with Artec Eva or Leo. Artec Space Spider boasts an even higher resolution, so we can get the finest of details. Like in this screenshot, you can see the pores on the skin. And if you need to scan a person posing with an item in their hand and the item is rigid, it may be better to scan the object separately. After that, we'll just add the complete scan of this bag to the scan of the person holding it. The same can be with a book or with a laptop. In this case, when you're scanning your model, you won't have to spend much time trying to get the best coverage of difficult to reach areas. If holding an item still is difficult, it's better to place some kind of support underneath so that you can scan the item and remove the stand during data processing. For CGI or producing custom sportswear, they often require a scan in an A pose in tight clothes. Now we're going to see how such a scan can be made, very similar to what we, actually everything that we have discussed before can be applied here, but the trajectory is a bit different. We scan the arms separately from the rest of the body, so there are 3 different scans: first arm, second arm, and the rest of the body. If the clothes that the person is wearing are tight, you may want to scan the torso separately from the legs too. This way, we scan each body part per scan. So if our model, say, moves her leg or does some belly breathing, it won't affect the rest of the scan and will be effortless to fix. When the model is ready, we can take some measurements right in Artec Studio. Here you can see that I've just built a plane and managed to measure the wrist, the volume and the surface area, the perimeter as well of the wrist. 3D artists and CGI specialists often require a reference pose to start from. And now we will take a look at a model, at how such a model can be made. Very similar to the model in an A pose, but just the pose is different. Let's take a look. If movement during scanning cannot be avoided due to the pose, we suggest making separate scans of areas that are very likely to move. And for example, here we have scanned each hand, each arm, each leg separately from the torso and then aligned them afterward. If your scanning conditions and pose allow this, scanning the body in bigger chunks can be much faster in the long run. Earlier, I demonstrated manual alignment. This is auto alignment. So all you are required is just to press the button, as easy as ABC, right? And after alignment, we can just erase any unnecessary overlapping parts from the scans. And that's a great model that we have got in the end. Okay, if you're scanning someone who finds it difficult to hold the pose that you require, you can use some kind of support so that they could put their legs or arms on it or maybe lean on it. And then just like with that example that I've showed where the girl was holding the weight, you can just erase the scan, that support, during processing of your data. Now, as you have seen, a child's head can be scanned for making custom helmets, including orthotic helmets, and this is believed to be challenging due to involuntary head movements. A child is normally unwilling to ignore a tiny single thing happening near to them, and therefore sometimes we get questions like, shall we scan children when they are asleep? Well, in our next chapter, you're going to see that making a head scan of a baby or a child is not as difficult as it looks. And also you will see that the algorithms of Artec Studio are able to make an accurate 3D scan of a baby's head, of a child's head, even if they have moved head during scanning. If you're scanning with Artec EVA, we recommend enabling the motion tolerance feature in the advanced settings of the Scan tab for more stable tracking. And if you're scanning with Artec Leo, we suggest switching on the record without registration option, and it will perform data registration in the software later on. As with the examples shown earlier, we will start with the face and scan it only once. And just like before, we keep either the shoulders or the back in the field of view, and of course, scan the top of the head. As you can see, the resulting data is somewhat chaotic because the frames are not registered between themselves. They are just mere pictures, 3D pictures. And you will see now that there was even time where our little model not only moved her head, but also touched her face with a hand right there. But this project is still very easy to process because even if the child has moved their head, the shape of the head did not change. So we apply rough serial registration by geometry and texture. Then we erase from the scans the shoulders and the back, which remain stable, and the hand, which was unstable, but nevertheless we delete it as well. Then we run global registration by geometry and texture. And then we use Fusion to create the model. Again, no witchcraft, it's pretty real. And actually, this is the project that we are going to share together with the presentation and the model of that guy. So you will be able to process the project of the scan with the head of this little girl, just like I did in this video. Okay, so now let's take a look at how we can scan an arm. It actually doesn't matter whether you are scanning a straight arm or a bent arm. In any case, it is very wise to use the body as the background. And for that reason, in the next video, we have asked our model to hold the hand 45 degrees to the body, just so that we could use the body as the background, but also, in this case, all the areas of the hand remain reachable to the scanner. And the second thing is the model was asked to keep their fingers strained, because it is more difficult to keep them motionless if they are relaxed. So let's take a look. Yeah, the model looks somewhat familiar, doesn't she? Okay, well, we scan the outer side, then from the top, then from the bottom. Then we address the area between the fingers. Do not forget to get the fingertips. And then we scan the inner part of the arm. During processing, we erase the body prior to global registration and run global registration by geometry to make a beautiful model. Artec Studio allows using us not only the texture from the scanner, but also the texture from an external camera, which can be quite handy in the tattoo industry. And actually, in this screencast, I especially love how the tiny hair is visible on the hand. All right, for foot scans, that's something that we're going to discuss next. So for foot scans, depending on the requirements, the scan can be made under the full load, meaning the body weight, partially loaded, or neutrally unloaded. To obtain a precise scan of the arch of the foot, we asked our model to press their foot against our glass table. As you can see, the size of the table is perfect because it allows us to maneuver around it, and the height can be adjusted. So we can scan from the bottom as well. In fact, that's where we start. We scan the sole of the foot, changing the angle in such a way so we can see first the left and then the right parts of the sole. And then we move Leo to capture the heel. And then we rise up to the upper part of the foot to scan the toes. Actually, the frame of the table will help us here. Then we scan the shin and the calf from one side and the other side, and finish scanning on the heel. Just like with scanning an arm, we quickly remove the background from the scan, run global registration by geometry, and get a great model. People with some medical conditions are not allowed to put the weight on their foot, and therefore the leg needs to be scanned unloaded. And in that case, sometimes tracking is lost due to the lack of surface in the field of view. That can be solved with a wisely chosen scanning angle. So here we start from the knee, then move down to the toes. Then we scan the sole via the edge of the sole. From there, we move the scanner to capture the other part of the sole, and then scan the remaining part of the calf. Again, global registration can be done by geometry because there is plenty of geometrical features, and we get a great model. Our fastest scan today will be the next scan, that is of a jawline. Well, actually, the only practical advice which we can give here is that if you are worried about the shine of the teeth because of the saliva, you may want to first dry them with a cloth or use intraoral dental spray and increase the sensitivity setting via the respective slider. I will just now ask my colleagues to please put the, oh, there you go. Okay, you have the link to the intraoral spray in our chat. Now there will be some sensitive scans, so please turn away if you're not quite ready to see it. We have mentioned earlier that not only human body parts can be scanned, organs can be too, sometimes during surgery, before the specimen is delivered to pathology. And actually I'm demonstrating here a bovine heart, but in fact, with a human heart, it's going to be the same, so you can still scan it with Leo. Okay, actually it's for a reason that I have recorded the screencast directly from the website. I just wanted to show that we have a gallery out there, a great gallery, so please visit it after the webinar if you feel like it. It has plenty of different models divided by scanners, divided by applications, so I'm sure you're going to have a great time out there. And my colleagues, my wonderful colleagues, have posted the link to our website just now in the chat. Right, that's actually everything that we have prepared for today. All right, well, it seems like we ran out of questions. Well, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm really pleased with the number of questions I was asked. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your attention. Thanks for spending time with us. Subscribe to this channel and stay tuned for more Artec webinars and Artec videos. Thank you so much.